Preparing for interviews. Now, what are the factors to be considered while conducting selection interviews? The time, the venue, and the panelists are all important factors in the selection process. Now, it is totally a psychological affair, and it conveys an impression to the candidates. So you need to take adequate measures to plan your interviews at the right time, giving space for the candidates to prepare themselves and to arrive at the venue and prepare themselves for the interview. Your impression, the organization's image is at stake. A shabby approach to the selection process will have a negative impact in the candidate's mind, and by word of mouth it spreads and it has a negative impact on the labor pool available. Psychological effects. You need to make sure the candidates are comfortable in the selection process. You might put them under a stress interview, but the factors and the approach to the selection process itself, they should not be harassed because of your ineffective process. You make sure the psychological effects are taken care of. Opportunity to learn about the organization. It is a healthy opportunity to build your brand. Applicants are walking inside your organization for the selection process. It is how you behave to the applicants. They get positive cues and they would most definitely like to continue with the organization if given a chance. Control of bias. Now, all effort should be taken to avoid bias during interviews. Now, bias needs to be avoided at any cost. What are the types of questions that you might face in an interview? The variety of questions are open questions, the typical who, what, why, when and where. These are open-ended questions which try to elicit maximum information from the candidates. The interviewer just asks one question and you're bound to give it in paragraphs just to make sure the complete information is fed. That is the kind of question most often interviewers deal with. Probing questions. To go one step deeper and to analyze the person's real capability, interviewers can really get into thick of things and ask you probing questions into certain details of your experience, certain situations you've handled. So, close questions. Close questions are asked and to be answered in a single word or two. That is just to confirm certain aspects of your details and your previous job experience. Multiple questions. These are generally asked to see how good you are in handling multiple questions and how good you are in analyzing information presented in those questions and what is the best answer that you're giving for those questions. Problem solving or situational questions. For certain questions, these kind of questions are asked saying that, what is your problem solving ability? Have you solved this kind of situation before? If so, I'm giving you a situation, how will you handle it? How would you handle it better? These are situational questions to assess the kind of performance you would actually deliver if you are hired for the job. Leading questions. These are basically questions asked to set the platform wherein the candidates are nervous. The interview panelists just ask you a few questions to make you comfortable, wherein you can just adjust to the environment and relax and start for the more formal phase of the interview. Tip for candidates, you will be obviously asked for questions. Do you have any questions for us? You are expected to ask at least a few questions just to make sure you are a serious applicant. Ask about your job profile in a detailed way. Don't ask preliminary questions and very basic ones which you are supposed to know before you appear for the interview. Ask about the career prospects for that particular job and the reward systems available. What are the possibilities of transfer and the higher opportunities? So it makes you look like a sensible candidate and a better fit. What are the selection errors? Are interviews the best possible way to select candidates and bring them into your organization? Limited scope. If interviews are not conducted properly, it gives you a very limited scope for getting in the right candidate. Limited relevance. If the interview does not have focus and the interviewer does not know how to conduct the interview in the right manner, does not ask the right questions, there is no relevance. Artificiality. Interview atmosphere is an artificial atmosphere and an applicant can disguise himself. He puts his best behavior forward Now you will not know how he is in a pressure situation because he is disguising himself and he is putting his best dressed foot forward. Errors of judgment. The halo effect. The interviewer is concentrating on one particular aspect and that colors his rest of the aspects and the judgment, wherein he is focusing on one particular aspect whereas the other positive aspects are sidelined and the applicant doesn't get selected. So it's called the spillover effect. Contagious bias. The interviewer himself is suggesting answers through his body language and cues to the candidate, now wherein he has a chance to modify his answers, wherein he has no clue. He takes up cues from the interviewer and gives out the answers. Logical error. Because of a fundamental error on the interviewer's part, the candidate suffers a lot because of the logical error conducted or done by the interviewer. Now, lack of skill and experience by interviewers. Now, your interviewed panelists should be trained. The HR team has to ensure that they have adequate training to conduct, to handle all the aspects of the interviews so as to get the right candidates. What are the different types of selection testing available for? You have intelligence or cognitive ability tests, you have aptitude tests, personality tests. Now, personality tests are to describe in a way the type of people you need, their motivation levels and their ambitions. It gives you a fair idea of the type of person. Aptitude tests can be further split into reasoning, numerical reasoning or verbal reasoning, spatial-visual ability, perceptual speed and accuracy, say for example in a clerk's job to identify non-identical pair of numbers, or psychomotor ability. Spatial-visual ability indicates your intelligence levels in dealing with practical situations. These are the different types of tests involved in selection. What are the limitations of psychometric testing? Though it sounds really good, but there are certain limitations involved in this process. No direct relationship. It is often found that psychometric tests don't really give you the best picture when it comes to a candidate and his actual job performance. He might have scored well in the psychometric test, but his actual job performance is not good. So there is a disconnect between the actual picture and what was perceived earlier. Now, interpretation of test results. As is the case with any complicated testing process, psychometric tests need to be interpreted and in a scientific manner. It needs to be interpreted by an expert, so it can give you different results. Now, additional difficulties. If you do not revise your psychometric tests, it becomes known to all the candidates for a period of time. So there is no really significant aspect to this particular type of test if you do not revise it over a period of time. Discrimination and bias. It is often discussed that psychometric tests cannot be used across candidates because they come from different backgrounds and they have different experiences. So one aspect of this psychometric testing or disadvantage is that this cannot be used for a large group of people because it does not measure the same characteristics because of the different background of the candidates who are applying for a particular job.